Good morning, fellow tuners, or night, or depending on where you at. But today we're going to cover a little bit of ignition timing, what adjustments you need to make for the B58, limiters, and loads. So all the nannies that you need to get rid of in order to tune your vehicle. One thing to remember is when you're working with timing is that you need to always consider max brake torque. I have a little diagram here I pulled out from internet. It just basically shows that efficiency versus a timing degrees advance. If you run more timing on regular fuel pump or you run a buttload of timing on E85, just doesn't mean you're going to make power because at some point on E85 it's usually about 13 and a half, 14 degrees. It's about E50, E40 mix. You're going to run out of efficiency and all you're going to be doing is knocking your engine out and creating the conditions for ring lands and bend rods and so on. Not every engine is bulletproof. If somebody else runs 14 and a half degrees, and you can't run 13, you start correcting and so on. It doesn't mean his engine is, superior. It's just that, well, it is theoretically, but the problem is that every engine is going to be different, right? So the rule of thumb is 13 and a half, right? If you're knocking, pull down the timing a little bit. If you see that it's okay, well, it's running good, try 14. If 14 runs good, try 14.5. The best way to test it is on the dyno. So there's no way around it. You have to dyno it. But usually 13.5 is like a good spot. It's about at 8.5, 9 on a 91 octane gas, which is 95 for my European guys. Um, and 98 RON, which is 93 octane, it's about 11 and a half. Sometimes you can run 12. I wouldn't go that far, but yeah. Anyway, so just remember, max brake torque is very important. So the first two things we're gonna change are the oh, there we go. I opened the log, not the map. 1 second. Technical difficulties. Yeah, so I didn't modify the file system before, so I had a little write file that I have left over from Tuner Pro. Anyway, so this is the factor for corrections, and then you need 10 base corrections for the 1 and 2 bank, right? So these two tables are correlated, obviously. What they mean is the maximum correction that can occur due to the temperature or knock event or whatever. Well, knock is a little bit different, but this is due to the correction event, right? And this is the factor that is going to influence this. And this is the degrees, upper limit of degrees that is going to pull. So it can pull up to 10 degrees basically. Well, for 91 and 93 octane, you don't have to change anything in the temp base correction factor. I mean, temp base correction table main, but the factors, you can change the values in the first two cells and three columns to 0, right? And then the rest of the table can use a 10-degree reduction. It's not a lot, I know, but we're going to the BMW engines are very sensitive to knock, and even if you lose traction somewhere, it can be like, okay, let's pull 3 degrees out. So we're just gonna, it's not desensitizing knock tables. We're just setting the lower ignition pull from whenever we have torque spike event or slight overboost and so on, because BMW tends to reduce the timing a lot, so we don't want to have that happen, especially whenever we're doing pulls and so on. So we're just going to give a 10% reduction, right? So this is what you're going to end up with. I know I got to close this because New Tuner Pro likes to redraw the picture and make it all red and stuff. This is what you will end up with for 93 octane, right? For 91 octane, I wouldn't even touch these tables, right? So just leave it stock. But for E85, because of the fuel propagation and, well, the flame propagation and the flame speed as it has, and about 20-30% more cooling capacity than regular fuel, you would have to actually lower these even further. And then the other thing is these tables right here, right? So you see the 6.5 here. So what I would do after about 3,500 RPM, I would actually reduce the maximum amount of timing that can be pulled to about negative 0.6, negative 6.5, right? this is also good for build motors. Only do this when you run anything about E40. This is crucial, right? So anything above E40, you can play with these tables. Below, don't touch them, because what happens is there's a lot of torque limiters again, as you know, and if you have slight overboost or so on, it can trigger like very significant amount of correction, and that is again due to the over complex torque security system in the BMW, right? So no, I guess you could call it torque security system, but it's just limiters, right? Internal torque limiters and so on. You can have your XHP flashed and everything, but it can still sometimes trigger, and we don't want to do that. Again, if you're really overboosting, it's going to pull timing and so on, but you just got to pay attention to the other factories, factor safeties rather than this, right? This is just a preset that I'm sharing, right? So, and the only thing we're gonna do is we're gonna take this and copy right here. This is especially prevalent on S55 engines, and a lot of people on S55s do this. I'm not gonna name the tuners, but they actually go in even lower. Let's just say we're tuning for E85, so we're just gonna use these values, right? And then here you can give it another further 25% reduction, right? So 1.25, and then copy it from the bank 1 to bank 2, right? So this is done. Now the other thing you have is your knock factor tables. Don't touch these things unless you have a built motor. For built motors, you have a lot of noise inside the cylinder, right? And the sensitivity in the knock sensors has to be adjusted a little bit. What I would do if I were you, so after about 130 load and about 4,500 RPM, usually that's when the noise starts to show itself. I would give it 10% increase, like just multiplicator 1.1 multiply. This is also good for N55, N54 built motors and so on. This just applies to the platform across. And these different values are going to be all different for different cylinders, right? Because for example, cylinder 2, cylinder 5, and cylinder 6 are noisy ones, right? So cylinder 6, cylinder 5, cylinder 2 are going to be like all different values, right? So because the noise is created differently. So we have 2.8 here, we have 2.3 here, and then we have 4.3 here, right? So you see they're all different. Like here you have more sensitivity, here you have less, because cylinder 5 is noisy. Cylinder 6 is not as noisy, but cylinder 6 is a lot more noisier than cylinder 4, so you can see cylinder 4's value is actually lower than cylinder 6. So anyway, and then cylinder 3, obviously. Oh, well, this one's really high, but you get the idea. You can't just copy one value and put it in the other one because you have to do it per cylinder, right? Anyway, so once you've done that, we can get to the main tables, which are here, and you need to the things that you have to modify are the main one and main two. You also could modify code 1 and code 2. I like to do what I do to everything. Basically, if I modify main 1, right, and main 2, if I modify main 1, for example, I use these cells, I'm just gonna copy the same exact values, right? So if I made modifications, for example, I'm running like 91 octane, so I know I need like 8.5 degrees, right? So for example, these are all the modifications that I made, right? I'm not gonna modify the other ones, but I know that I made modifications from 3,500 and 140 load to, max. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna select 130, which is one below, and then 3,500, and I'm just gonna paste it at that set point. So wherever you started copying it, paste it at the same set point, and it's gonna make changes to that top end as well. The lower values will be read differently because obviously the car is going to, different states in between the changes. So when the car is cold, it's gonna use one timing table. When it's warm, it's gonna use the other timing table, and so on and so on and so on. So, and then the same changes I'm gonna do to my cold tables, right? So at 3500, 130 load, I'm just gonna click at the same spot and insert the ignition tables. So don't change a lot, just change whatever you need and then copy those values to the same cells on the other tables. And that's it for ignition table. Again, remember, MBT, you gotta be careful, start low. You'd rather have low timing, low power, and then increase it as you can, rather than a lot of timing, and then you're just gonna build a new motor, basically. That's a easy solution. Anyway, so now the limiters. These are nannies that you need to increase. There's some limiters in boost table that we already went through, and then we're just gonna keep going through here. So the first two ones, you need, this is for the control, I don't remember what it is. It's I think it's clutch something to do with clutch. I have to dig out through my notes. But anyway, set it to 1000 to start with. For stock turbos, you can do about 800. We can do like 800, and that's it. So this is the max factor torque correction error lower threshold or something like that. I don't remember again. Yeah, I think that's what it is. This is for the PI regulator. Set it to 800 and forget it. PI regulator is your integrated fuel injection controller. So these are for the transmission. As you can see, the trans is actually already maxed out. I didn't do this; it just comes like that. I think MHD does it on their end. I'm not sure. See, there's like no description here for stuff. You don't even know what it does. But on BM3, you have description for all this stuff, and yeah, I can show you sometime how the BM3 looks like, but much better, I'll tell you that. But a lot of people prefer MHD for ease of use and so on. These are all your trends and max driver requests and so on. This is in case of error. This is the lower torque level increase of error. In case of error. So what you're gonna do is you're just gonna error on transmission, by the way. So what we're gonna do is set it to 1000, or you can max it out. The max value is 32,760 or something like that. Yeah, 767. You're never gonna reach that. You're never gonna reach 1000 unless you're on a big turbo and so on. But yeah, either way, I like to set it to 1000 just because I'm OCD about some things. So yeah, copy it, copy it, copy it, copy it. And that's it. And these are mods. I think there's one sport and one for sport and one for comfort. But anyway, you get the idea. Once we said that, we'll take the torque reduction factor RPM. Reduction factor of 1, basically it's not getting reduced, then it takes your maximum torque and then multiplies it by the value, right? So let's open the calculator. If you have, for example, 752 newton meters of torque at one point, the reduction factor of 9.14, that's going to give you 687 theoretically, right? So this is just the calculation tables. If you have not flashed your transmission because it has a 510 Newton meters torque limit, please flash your transmission with XHP stage 3, and then you can tune properly, because this will throw off the calculation and can cause slippage in transmission. And the other thing is your car is not going to run very well if you don't have a flash transmission. This is the max stored memory error. We need to set it to 1000. So basically, this is just gonna error out, and because the limiter 4096, I think, if you're gonna not have this raised all the way. Max calculated power, this is in kilowatt, right? We are going to raise this to 800 because I like 800 number. You can raise it to 600 and you'll be fine. Load limit, this set to 0.7. Limit factor by rich component protection. You can set this to the lowest Lambda limit rich, whatever you have here. Alright, so remember, this didn't save. That's weird. But anyway, so if we have set this here to like 11.7, 11.6, depending on whatever you're tuning, it's like what, 178, 179 lambda. You can send it to like 175 lambda, right? So that's about it. I set it to 0.7, and that's fine. Let's see. Max natural aspirated volumetric efficiency. This is basically your VE table, right? You can leave it stock. You can increase it to 100. Doesn't matter. This is going to be mainly idle. Um, let's see. Torque request ceiling. So this is the driver wish. Basically, driver wish is what you can get maximum allowed. This is in foot-pounds, right? We're gonna raise it, obviously. We're gonna set this to, this is driver request if somebody remembers, N55 and 54. We're gonna raise it to 1000. This is the maximum you can request from the car, right? Switch for condition style and leave it on. Max power monitor, again, 800 because I like the number. You can raise it higher. Max torque at clutch monitoring, basically how much, remember the transmission takes 510. It can slip if you don't flash the transmission because you need to increase the clamping pressure and so on. I'll raise it to 1000 because I like 1000. This maximum actual torque, again, 510 or 550 Newton meters. I think it's 510. Yeah. This is again 1000. This is your limiter for transmission. This is mainly transmission and engine reporting to the transmission limiters, right? This is for injection active. We can leave it at 1000. This is internal. This is the maximum engine can see, right? The internal moment. Again, 1000. And this is the wheel speed. If you're on a dyno, it can get freaky, right? Because it doesn't sense the signal check. Well, if you're going too fast, for example, that can freak out as well. If you have like really fast acceleration, the speed sensor is going to freak out. So what we're going to do is we're going to set this to 500. I think the max value is 533. I don't remember. But anyway, 500 and forget it. Next thing we're going to worry about is your, well, you can actually scale these up. Remember, whatever value you have in your gauge scaling. So this is just the power equal to whatever you're outputting on your gauge scale. So if you have like 680 max, you can set it to 680 in the breakpoints. All right. And then 680 over here. So at 680 is going to show 680. It's just scaling. Anyway, max load spool. Okay, these tables are already maxed out, right? They're not usually maxed out like this. They're usually set to similar something like this, all across, with lower load obviously being at higher ignition corrections and so on. But anyway, since they're already maxed out, you see 327 670, it's max value for the load that you can actually get. You're never gonna reach that, obviously. You might see 300 load eventually. It's like 36 psi, I think, 35. But anyway, since we're not going to be using the load tuning, we're going to be using the MHD suit. What we need is we need to set the main and spool, which are actually your tuning tables, right? That you're going to use for tuning. To 260, 280. You can set it to 300, you know, whatever, 327 and max it out, obviously. I usually set it to 300, so there's some safety limit in there, but 327, let's just use that. Let's go with that. And then there's this table. Oh, yeah, no, never mind. There's one more. So this is due to EKP module, your load limiter basically like limits your fuel output and so on. But if it sees that the load is exceeding a certain point, it's just gonna freak out and say, "Hey, we can't do that." Set it to what? You guessed it, 327. Anyway, this is the load to torque. This is what most people miss. Old BMWs had 220 limit. This one has sky high limit. We're gonna load the breakpoints, right? And if you don't increase this, your boost is never gonna go up. It's gonna stuck at 200. Oh my God, here we go. No, why am I keep opening the same table? Here we go. So what we're gonna do is basically at reference torque, right? You're gonna see about at 25 psi on pump gas, you're gonna see about 680, 690 reference torque. So at that point, we want to see 180 load, but it's going to be about 200. So what you're going to do is you're going to scale this to 200 because the load of 200 gives you about 22, 23 psi. plus some loss on the efficiency and so on. That's going to give you about this much Newton meters in calculation, right? And then these one, we're going to do 260. Again, if you're running stock turbo, 240 is fine because 240 is going to give you about 24, 25 psi. 260 is going to give you upwards of 30 psi, if not 30, depending on elevation that you're located at. So 240 usually is fine. You can leave this stock if your car runs fine at 180, the cell before this. If you are one of those that running E85 and going balls to the wall, increase it to 200, and this is it. If your transmission slips, back to 180, flash the XHP, play with this, right? So this is not like a set thing. You actually have to work with these tables. But 240 is what you're gonna get max, right? 26 psi. If you want to go higher with, like, you know, once you have a custom boost enabled and everything, you want to be like, well, shit, I want to, like, you know, spike the boost if you're on big turbo, like 30 psi. Well, at 30 you might need 260, maybe 280, just so you have like 262, 263 fluctuations, right? The point of this is you always scale the last cell, so you never reach it, right? So even if the point reference is here, you never reach that load, so you don't get limited. That's the point of this table. So we're just gonna leave it at 240 for now and close this down. Again, I'm gonna go in MHD plus in the next one, but just so you know, we're going to be using the boost based tables, right? The custom MHD plus stuff with the 3D ceiling. To scale this, you have to scale the gears and you have to scale the RPM. We're gonna do it in the next one, and video 2 is up. Enjoy.